welcome back to the Real Men of Real Estate here on KCAA Radio. You can find us on your dial at 1050 AM, 102.5 FM, and 106.5 FM. And we've been talking today with Spencer about how he's looking at life a little different and interested in getting into real estate. So welcome back, Spencer.
Thank you.
I kind of want to talk to you a little bit about how did you choose real estate investing? You know, what's the overarching impetus here that started driving you down this path?
Sure. So, money.
Absolutely.
Money. It's a good starting point. Honestly, I think it was just kind of like one thing after another, right? Like all these things just like slowly transition and all. I could kind of like walk you through that, but I think like the overarching like reason for it is just like my entrepreneurial spirit, I guess you could say.
Sure.
And like I say money jokingly, but at the same time, like anybody in my family would probably like laugh and like nod their head at that, just because like I've always been like the like more like money minded one in the family, right?
Okay.
Like people know that like I'm a saver. You know, new ways of earning money excite me and interest me.
Right.
Right. So anytime like somebody wants to talk about like a business idea, I'm usually like the one to get like super into that conversation, right? Just because
I got it.
I find it interesting. I find commerce and all that just very interesting. But
certainly
so like
explains some of our conversations and also your friendship with Eric as well.
Totally.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Very like-minded people. Which I'm drawn to because my family is not full of those types of people. So I have to get my fix elsewhere.
Absolutely.
But so like more specifically, I do like I want to tell you like how I kind of ended up here because I think it's interesting that really I got interested in stocks back when I lived in Chicago at my very first job out of college.
Okay.
My boss was always like looking at stocks and stuff, and I didn't know anything about it. Like when I say like I'm the only one in my family that thinks like this, but like that's true. And as a result of that, like I never received any sort of information or education on money or stocks or capitalism or commerce or anything like that. Like we just didn't even talk about it in my house. It wasn't taboo. It just wasn't, it wasn't a topic. And so I learned a bit about stocks from him and just started investing because he kind of said like, man, I've only been doing this for 15 years. If I had gotten into it in my 20s, like, at your age, like, man, like you have so much potential if you just start putting a little bit of money in now.
Yeah. Time is the great equalizer, right?
Yeah. So at one point I read this book. It's called Quit Like a Millionaire. And basically, the author is just like something I saw mentioned on Yahoo Finance, right? Because I'm just looking at stocks in the morning.
Sure.
Like, and I'm not like a big time investor. I just find it interesting. If I drip maybe $50 a month, then like that's good for me. But this lady, Christy Shen, so she had this book, Quit Like a Millionaire, and she just talks about putting money in index funds. Is like very simple sort of style investing. And her and her husband saved up enough money that they were getting passive income from dividends and whatever else, enough to quit their jobs at age 33 and travel the world. I'm like, wow, that sounds great to me, right?
Yeah.
But in that book, she kind of like, I don't want to say like she hates on real estate. She definitely like voices like that in her opinion, like real estate is something to avoid. It's not for this financial freedom path that she promotes, right? So that was very interesting that I say that's how I got started in real estate is by hearing this woman say that real estate is not the path towards financial freedom. But
that struck a chord with you. You're interested.
No, I'm interested, but more so because she talks about financial freedom, and I'm like, what financial freedom? Like I've never really heard like that term before. So on her blog, I think, which I started reading a little bit, um, she interviews this guy, Craig Curlop. Craig
Okay.
Curlop is part of the Bigger Pockets family, and he has this book called The House Hacking Strategy.
Oh, I'm
So
familiar.
I'm
Yeah.
like, cool, that's interesting. Let me read that book. It seems to be about real estate. Like she doesn't like real estate, but this guy does. Like, how interesting. So he talks about house hacking. Meanwhile,
Oh,
we
so
have a
for our
roommate.
listeners, what is house hacking?
House hacking is like to maybe buy like a duplex or a
Uh,
house with multiple bedrooms, and you're basically filling those rooms and hopefully paying for all or at least some of your mortgage
okay. So it's a
with
way of
those
covering
with that
your
rental income.
costs. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, we live in San Diego. Housing is incredibly expensive here. I wasn't covering my mortgage, but we got a roommate. And
Uh,
as I'm reading this book, I'm like, wow, I'm already doing this house hacking thing. I just called it having a roommate,
right.
right? Because it's really expensive here. And my wife and I had recently bought a condo.
Ah, that's
Um,
right. I remember that. Yeah.
yeah, which ended up being a good investment decision. And
Hmm.
we knew that like we couldn't really cover the full monthly mortgage, but we could get a roommate.
Right.
We had previously done Airbnb out of like an apartment that we rented here in San Diego, just renting out the second bedroom
Uh-huh.
on Airbnb like years ago when Airbnb was very new still.
So you've really
Um,
you've been a real estate investor for a long time.
yeah, and like so I started like this concept was like, oh, like house hacking, this is real estate investing. And I'm like, well, I never really thought about it that way, but like investing just in general is interesting and appealing to me. So that's kind of how what like led me down this whole path in the first place. Once I like realized like, well, I'm kind of already doing this. It sounds like I just need to get more serious about it if I want to like seek out these other opportunities that lie within.
Okay, I gotcha. That's really
So
fascinating. Wow.
yeah,
So
and
so
it's
what
just
what
funny
came
that like
next? Go ahead.
um I guess what came next was I started having like pain in my arms because I work at a desk all day. And I ended up with this like workers' comp case and just like being in pain a lot, like
Oh
every
man,
day. Yeah.
that's brutal.
Um,
I mean, living with pain. Wow.
right. It's
Uh,
yeah, it's a thing a lot of people deal with, and like you don't really like understand it until you also are dealing with it. But um, so it's like it was rough dealing with that, but at the same time, it kind of like lit a fire under me to say like I need to start maybe looking at other um, ways of like creating an income for myself
sure.
because like sitting at a computer all day is not it's not going to be sustainable. Like this isn't going to just magically go away. And even with the physical therapy and all that and the doctors and yeah, I've been going through it. It's been years, but I realized like you know like so you just gotta I guess take charge and like figure it out, right?
Right.
Because like the doctors aren't going to solve that problem for you. They're going to try and help you with the pain, but they're not going to find you a new job. Um,
Right.
so I was like, I'm kind of already interested and like, you know, looking into this real estate thing. Like maybe I should start considering this as more of like an actual career path, which it has not yet become. Um, and that I think that goes back to like me saying that like it's not always like you listen to these podcasts and all that, or at least for me, I listen to so many like trying to learn about real estate investing, right? And I got
Right.
super like absorbed by it all. Um,
It's almost too much sometimes. Like it just keeps you
yeah,
straying from idea to idea, and it's hard to take action.
totally. And like I got into this mindset of thinking like all this needs to be done very quickly, right? Because other
Hmm.
people are doing it very quickly and my arms hurt and I just need to like get going on this as fast as possible. Um, which makes it more scary, I think. You know, like people like
A
they
lot of
talk about
pressure.
like the analysis paralysis where like people
Hmm.
can't jump into their first deal or whatever. I think it's that, it's the pressure, like you just said. Um, it's the pressure that we put on ourselves to kind of like try and like match up to all these examples that we see on TV or hear about on podcasts.
Right. Yeah, I've
And
done
it's
that.
not that easy.
No.
It's not
And,
easy at all.
and so many
So,
times you find out somebody who's jumped into real estate and they went from, 0 to 20 houses in the first 18 months or whatever, had, experience before in business, running companies, or they owned a couple restaurants or something else where they had to manage a lot of people and resources, and they understood how to read a P&L and L and put it together and what does a deal structure look like. And if you haven't done any of that stuff before, boy, it's daunting and there's so much to learn.
and that's the majority of us, right? As
I
real
think it's
estate
normal,
investors,
yeah.
we're normally coming from somewhere else.
Hmm.
Um, so, and that's the side of it they don't really talk about either, is like those sorts of things, like the paperwork, the P&Ls and all of
Yeah.
that. It's like, they talk about building your team and all that. And it's like,
Your core
there's
four and
just
all that.
yeah, but there's
Yeah,
just so much other little stuff. It's like, it's not just finding deals and buying
right.
houses, it's running a business. So
Yeah,
you have to be prepared to like learn how to really be an entrepreneur.
I think that's, yeah, well said. And it's so much more involved than anybody would realize. Um,
And I'm still figuring it out. Like I
but
don't
I th
pretend to have the answers to these things.
yeah, I think it's kind of it's a career-long journey once you get into it. Every time I think I know a whole bunch about a particular niche, then somebody says something else, and I have to question what I know.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
very humbling. Wow,
It
that's
is.
amazing. I mean, that's really amazing. I love hearing about that and how you're getting through it. So we're going to take a quick break though. So I'm Dan Redig. This is Spencer Rysman on the Real Men of Real Estate here on KCA Radio out of Redlands. I hope you're enjoying this conversation as much as I am, and we'll talk to you guys in a couple minutes.